Hi, this is Dr. Scott Young, and today we're going to do part 9. So there's a 9-part series, and we're doing the last one of that series. So part 9, the last days on the planet. Now you can easily find this in the Tribulation series playlist. Okay, so when you're looking through that, that's where you want to go and watch the other ones. Because I'm getting questions and people are asking something about the Antichrist. I'm like, it's in the playlist, so you guys can watch through that stuff. Okay, so we're going to go over a lot of that kind of stuff. I'm going to show you a very new couple cool things inside there. Coming right up. Okay, so I'm going to bring a couple things up on the screen here, and then we're going to have to back out here in a little bit. But I want to show you something. DrScottYoung.com. Oops, sorry, got to pull this off here. I got to end something here. Sorry about that. Okay, DrScottYoung.com. This is where you can go to the main website. The home page has, I want to show you a couple things. We actually put a lot of the videos on here so you can actually go to the channel. People ask us all the time, like, how do you find things? So we have actually, you guys can get a Hope in the Last Days series, different things here. This is the email, the timeline to you. If you want to do free downloads, there's a snot load of downloads in there, and some of that information too. And there's social media here. I get this a lot, guys. There's a lot of fakers who are trying to fake me left and right, and I'm telling you right now, this is where you find only me, not the fakers, only me in this thing. Okay, real simple way of doing that. And we actually put the kind of the cute death clock on here because it's got some fascinating comms. It's not real stuff anymore. It's fascinating comms with that too. You can kind of see all that stuff. It's kind of a cute idea with that. Now I want to show you a couple other things. I mean, there's videos. You can actually go and see the videos from here. That's the other part on there. There are articles that are some other kind of articles that you might be interested in downloading. You can definitely do that. Okay. But the bookstore is where I want to focus on just a little bit. Okay. Um, we actually have a plan. Now we have these in physical form for the Truth and Lies and What We Believe series and the Hope in the Last Days physical series books. Okay, or sorry, videos. And so we have those available, but it's only in the office, and I don't have a way to ship all that stuff yet. Okay, we'll do that down the road with that. But I want to show you some of the books that are out there. Here's a fiction. Um, Revelations of the Red Pill is probably my top selling book right now with that. But there's things that are relevant to what we're talking about today. So you can kind of click on Rapture, could there be more than one? And then it'll go and let you go buy the product. But you actually kind of explain a little bit about what that is. Okay, if you want to know a little bit more. The Foretold Book 1 and Book 2 series is by Dr. Jeff Swanson and me. He got his doctorate a little bit ago. The Foretold 2 is closer to what we're talking about today. Okay. Again, this is fictional, and so I think it might be very helpful in many ways when you look at that. Another one that is relevant in the areas that we're actually dealing with. Why is it not in here? Wow, so it's not on here. Okay, sorry. Is hadn't even added this one. I don't know why it's not added. Anyway, it's called The Wedding of Jesus. So it talks about the sheep and the goats, and then it talks about the bride. So you have a little bit more information on these kind of ones. And you can always find me, and all that stuff is on Amazon. You can find the Kindle version or the physical version. Sorry, that's the only place I have it. So just to give you an idea of where the heck we're talking about here. So let me pull this up on the screen. It takes me a second. I gotta stop that. Stop that share. Okay, sorry, I gotta take a second to like bring it up here. Okay, so here's the PowerPoint. We're gonna walk through again part 9, the last days on the planet. The other one was the last weeks on the planet. This is the last days on the planet with that too. Okay. All right, let's go over this one. You've seen this one before. I love doing this again because I know people keep asking the questions, but that's why I'm kind of hit them again because there's so much detail in there. Again, we've always talked about this, the pre-tribulation rapture of the bride. Rapture is Latin. Greek is called harpazo. That's what's in the New Testament, the Koinonia Greek. So we're talking that conversation. You can find that in many different sections. And I will announce something at the very end about what we're going to be talking about for um, future kind of YouTube videos that we'll do. Then we have the beginning of the tribulation. The beginning only starts. Oh, sorry, the Ezekiel 38 and 39 war. The beginning of the tribulation starts with the AC or the Antichrist. Okay, it doesn't start with anything else. If you tell me we're in the second seal, I go, because it has to be a guy that shows up here. And they go, well, it's Obama. The guy has to be revealed at the time that Jesus allows it. Does the guy exist? Sure. But he's not on the world stage. Okay. Remember, the Antichrist is a world player in this way. So, I mean, can it be a governor of a state in America? I don't know. I don't care. Is it like a world leader from, from the EU or whatever? I mean, I'm not really focusing on, I don't get a lot of focus on that. Some people want to go really hard on that because the reality is you're not going to be here anyway. So, but the point is that having the Antichrist in this kind of position is the beginning of this. Okay, Jesus has control of this. Now the authority comes from Satan, and we'll talk about that. The second level authority comes to the false prophet, which is the second beast. This is Revelation 13, verse 3, I think it is, 2, 3. So the false prophet's whole job is to bring on this thing called the image of the beast. Now, this is one of the coolest areas too, though we talk about it in other books here. But basically, the image of the beast, what I would say, is the one of the most amazing concepts of computerized AI or artificial intelligence. We couldn't have experienced this when I first started studying end time issues. My first date of studying this stuff was 1982. There wasn't, I mean, computers weren't even utilized. I mean, if my first computer I got was like an 8086 with two, floppy, 5 1/4 drives, right? It had no hard drive. Obviously computers were out before that, but barely anyone was ever using that. And so when you realize the AI technology, that's why when some people say, well, it's been out for, ages. And the answer is no, it hasn't. This concept is really a newer kind of idea. And this is why the Bible is so relevant. It gets it so right. You just have to read, through the analogies that John is bringing up because he can't actually, analogy doesn't say it's false. What analogy tells you is that how does a guy in 95 AD explain something that is post 2024? Farther than 2024, how would he explain that? Like, if I were trying to explain, and I don't believe in this, but one of my favorite series is Star Trek. What if I had never seen that Star Trek kind of idea, and then I was transported onto a Federation vessel? Well, how would I explain it with my own kind of 2024 mind with technology is way beyond me, right? And so it would be hard for me to maybe explain. I might be able to do a better job, but think about how much has changed so massively since John's time frame. Now, then we move into the mark of the beast that's required. This is the reason for the image of the beast. It's the reason for the expectation of the false prophet. But the Antichrist, then when he gets into this area, he is having, he will have Satan involved in him. Okay, so you have to understand that. Let me go backward here. Satan is in charge here, and I kind of put it down here below with this. The second seal happens later in that first half of the time frame, which I call World War III. Someone argued with me the other day, said, well, I think World War III was the Cold War through the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Okay. I mean, that's a semantic matter. Cool. You want to call that World War IV? That's fine with me. I'm just putting it on a hot war kind of thing. This is a 1.875 billion to be killed. And again, that's why I'm pushing it on to a world war where more than a billion are killed. So this is a very huge thing. And that actually intimates a concept of huge numbers of people, because when we have that number of people, that war starts, well, famine will come right afterward and hyperinflation issues occur. Then we have the pale horse with the quarter of the planet dying. These are all a trifecta kind of conversation of bam, 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 bam. Okay. They might be months apart, but yet what's happening is the effects of those are there. And that's why I think when I've really re-looked at the second, third, and fourth seal that people claim all the time is happening, they actually are direct relationship to a billion people dying on the planet. And again, if we haven't had a billion people or more, which we've never have, even with World War I and World War II, which is 100 million people at the biggest estimate, we've never had this kind of thing. And yet World War II shaped our whole history in so many different ways with that too. Now, we move out to the fifth seal, and that is the martyrs in Revelation 7, verse 10. Then we also talk about them a little in different other, a couple other spots of scripture with that too. We go backward here and we have the 144,000. These are young Jewish men who've never had sex with a woman. They're a very special set of group. And I believe that they come to Christ potentially almost as quick as maybe the rapture of the bride. When they see some of these things happening, it might actually spur them to that belief. It's Revelation 7. When we get into the severe deception, this is actually handled in Matthew 24. So that's why you can't just pull Revelation. Okay. The book of Revelation is a portion of understanding, but Matthew 24, Matthew 25, Malachi, or, Zechariah, Ezekiel. I mean, there's just a ton of things. Jude, John, 1 John, 2 John. There's stuff in 1 Corinthians 13. There's 15. There's Luke 12. I mean, there's just so many verses, and Mark kind of does it a little bit too. But there's so many verses that are talking, or chapters, or books that are giving you information about that. And so that's why we have to understand there's a severe deception. Now, I know people think we're in a severe deception. I would say today, from 2020 to 2024, we've had a deception. Now, we of the, the 21st century love to utilize hyperbole. Hyperbole is over speaking an issue. For instance, like, and we use things like severe, right? And those adjectives are a descriptor of that verb, with that, the adverb, is a descriptor of the verb, or we use adjectives to add to our nouns kind of thing, right? So in this case, this is an adverbial phrase. Use your little grammar kind of thing. An adverbial phrase that is giving you a huge another level. And when it does that in Greek specifically, it's saying that's severe deception. Actually, severe means death. That is someone who goes through a severe persecution that happens in Luke 12:47 and 47. When it says severe persecution, that means absolute martyrdom. That's what it means in that level. Okay. Again, Satan has to be God because the mark of the beast is here. Satan will be on the planet, kicked out. That's Revelation 12, 11, 12, 12. So we have Satan being God because he's mad as all get out here. Again, this is why some of these gross things are happening. He wants to kill, steal, and destroy. We jump into the first trumpet. Happens nearly at the same time frame as this hyperinflation stuff happening, if you notice that. And it goes, whoa. So we have a third of the plant life just burning off the map. We move into the second trumpet, which is the comet, or the volcanic kind of thing, which will create a volcanic kind of eruption kind of things. So how many millions would die? Tens of millions would die because of that, right? Move into the third one, and the third trumpet has a meteor, which is called wormwood, and that's a third of the fresh water is bitter. And if that hit in a particular zone or area, if you pick out different parts of the planet and you knocked out that by fresh water, you could be seeing 100 million people dying. Well, that also might have some play in the fourth trumpet or fourth seal. So the fourth trumpet and fourth sealed third trumpet might be happening nearly concurrently, but is two different issues that are occurring there, right? They might have some bleed to one another. And then we have the fourth trumpet, which is the third of the day, the night, the darkening kind of things. Well, that would happen because you got volcanic and meteors going off. I mean, when you got that kind of stuff, you're gonna reduce the day. That's when we have real global cooling, not global warming. That's when the climate people will kind of bounce back up, but it is because of some God issues going on. It's a awakening of the people on the planet. And sin is being judged here because there's a blood issue going on in this kind of stuff. In the fifth trumpet, we have the curse with the mark, I believe. Just one of the things that happens in there. These are the people that can't die for 5 months. Again, this is 2 episodes ago. And then we have our big one we just saw last week, World War IV. So if you think this is World War IV and this is World War V, cool. World War III, World War IV, cool. Again, this is 1.875-ish people dying. This is 1.5 people dying. Even though this is a third of the people dying versus this is a quarter of the people dying, remember, it would happen because there's more people around. These are estimates. Okay, I can't give you the exact number. And frankly, at the time frame, they might not even know what that number is. Okay, let's jump over. Now flip with me, because I always bug you guys to do this, is flip with me to Revelation 16. This is when we get into the bowl judgments. Now we'll give you more of the time frame here in a second. When we move over into the third bowl, this is a fascinating bowl. So the third bowl actually has the rivers and springs turn to water. Now, if you just remembered a minute ago, I just told you about the third trumpet, where a third of the planet, or a water source of the third of the planet, is what it's basically telling you, is going bitter. But now, instead of bitter, we have every water source going to blood. Now, it's fascinating that those who kind of have the viewpoint in the Left Behind series kind of idea, where you have the seals, the bowls, and the trumpets start a lot earlier than I would put them, way earlier. We'll explain that in a second. But when you put them there, he actually has them go on, and then weeks later they're off, right? And that's some of the way that's the statement. And I would say that's not what the word tells you. The word doesn't ever say that it goes away. The only trumpet, or the only curse of the planet that you ever would say, is the fifth trumpet, where it says it lasts for 5 months. That's the only one that has a time-locked period of time. So you can't say that these turn off. Now, as we look at this a little bit more, if the rivers go to blood, we got a short time frame to how much people can do. Now, if you did this in the 1800s, when a huge amount of prophecy conversation was happening, people were talking all the time, left and right, saying, prophecy is going to be fulfilled, the planet's going to end, and we're in we're in the seals, or in the trumpets, or whatever. And we see this today, but it was huge in that time frame. It was also huge in the time frame of in the late 1990s, because Y2K was coming up. But as soon as we flipped over at 9/11, no one talked about it. It was fascinating and they changed a lot of their viewpoints. And so when you have times of global distress, like World War One, like the 1800s, like World War Two, like 1990s, where we're moving up to 2000, or 2020, where we have global stress, people think about this stuff. And that's why I'm trying to bring it up to you of why, why they bring this up first. So the third bowl does of all of the springs and river sources are blood. Fourth bowl moves into the sun blisters those with the mark. Now, I actually did a study, and I kind of mentioned this to you before, but if you have a third of the planet, or sorry, the whole planet having scorching kind of level heat, I mean, that is Mercury, Venus kind of level heat that we just can't actually do. So, what would scorching be? I mean, probably micro holes in the atmosphere. That's when global warming or climate change is true. I would agree with it. But there's a reason for it, right? There's a reason for what's occurring. Now, if you knew all of the global events of the third trumpet, the fourth trumpet, the second trumpet, and then you have the third bowl and the fourth bowl, well, holy cow. Of course, the atmosphere is probably pierced with that. It's an easy kind of scientific viewpoint to see that's the next layer of that. Okay. So I have no problem with people who look at it that way, but we're looking at it from a scientific, after effect with that. Again, but it's not going to happen the way that the Kabbalists want you to see it as. That they have a fake level of the global current, I mean, the global climate change and silliness with that. Okay. Now, what are the effects of these two bowls? Now, here's what I want you to understand. This is why I push this toward the later part of the last few days is that you can only go about 5 days. Now, I would say 3 days, but some people have pushed it up to 5 days without drinking water. I mean, that's 5 days of life. Now, if this happened in 1880, make up a number, okay? This is why it didn't happen in this. I mean, I have people who believe in a basic amillennial viewpoint that everything occurred, or post-millennial viewpoint that everything actually occurred in Nero's day of 70 AD. But they can't ever explain these bowls to me. When did all the rivers go to blood? And if they didn't go to blood, it didn't happen. It's not yet, right? If the sun had blistered all the people, then it didn't happen. And then what they will tell you is those are analogies. You're not supposed to take it, literally. I'm going, and I'm going. What gives you the right to say that is an analogy? Maybe then Jesus really didn't die on the cross. Maybe, as Muslims would say, Jesus wasn't really on the cross. It was a spirit on the cross. And that's what allowed him to show up as a spirit being. Or replacement theory kinds of things that was happening in the Romantic era from the 1890s up to 1910. Concepts of D.H. Lawrence saying that Jesus was in a coma and just pushed away the stone after 3 days. Medically, none of those things make any sense. So, but now that we have these interesting things called bottled water, last 50, 60, whatever years that we would have had bottled water effective for us, well, we might see them go a little longer, but I can't go that long. If you realize most of the planet is going to die very quickly with this. The heat will actually increase the need for water. I mean, think about if you had a water in a bowl, and I love it when I see Northern Canadians. I mean that's what I'm not saying just north of me, but in the Northern Territory points of Canada or in Alaska, and they can actually throw the water up when it's 30 below, and the water will come down as crystals. And so, water changes really quickly with that. Well, what happens if you're at 130, 140, 150? I don't know, pick the number of the potential scorching of the fourth bowl, would water, if you had it in a bowl for a dog, it would just burn, maybe evaporate before you could even drink it. Does it evaporate in the bottle? Does it, the bottle, get destroyed before you can actually drink the water? I mean, there's a million things that go on with that too. Again, the timing of the bowls, Dr. Jeff actually believes these are part of the month of Elul, up third, fourth, and even he has the fifth and sixth bowl that kind of, he has a belief that they're in the month of Elul. I have a slighter different viewpoint that some of these ones lean toward the last 10 days. Now, we could get into argument. Now, he and I love to debate because we'll debate scripture back and forth. He'll go, yeah, but what about this verse? And what about that verse? And he's, I'm like, oh, that's a great verse. And I'll say, but what about this? What about that? And he goes, oh, that's a tough one. And it's that, give and take. And this is how we know to operate. We don't do it in a cantankerous method, but what we're trying to do is sharpen each other's minds based upon what the word is telling us. Because there are, and he's actually done this statement that there's potentially 650 verses that are dealing with the tribulation. So these are part of them. I know, many of them. There's always one that I haven't looked at exactly, but I know that many of them, and you can find them in the planbible.com. And when he, has the organization of that structure. But when we see this kind of thing, if it's really is toward the Elul of the month or 30 days versus the last, week or so, we're talking about a 1 or 2 week difference on a time scale that is way massively heavier. So again, I'm talking about the leaning and the belief and other kinds of things in there. So it just gives you an idea that there still is disagreement, and there always will be. And I don't get too bothered with that stuff. Okay. Again, we talked about this one, but it's very, very relevant. So I'm going to hit it again. The Jewish holidays that we are going to deal with at the last part of the tribulation. These two puppies are sitting beside each other because they're separated by a 10-day period of time. They fulfill one another. Rosh Hashanah has to lead into Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur has no meaning if you haven't fulfilled Rosh Hashanah. Okay, so Rosh Hashanah is the late portion of September-ish, sometimes middle, but it's the first day of Tishri of that month point. Is the anniversary of Adam and Eve being upon the planet. So we're talking about a marriage issue. Well, that's interesting kind of stuff because so much of the Gospels talk about the bride in other ways. We're marrying Jesus. That's the whole reason for him to come, because he was accomplishing that in Ephesians 5, 12 through 23 or something like that, in that realm where he talks about the bride and the groom's responses. It's done in a lot of weddings. But Jesus says or Paul says this in Ephesians 5:23, that I'm telling you this mystery, but what I'm really talking about is the church and Christ in that relationship. So the analogy, he gives you feet to the analogy with that. But again, Adam and Eve were married to one another. So she was made for him and he was made for her, and the whole story, right? This is a celebration of a great noise. This would be the seventh or the seven thunders that happens. And again, over here is this gorgeous picture I love of a thunder coming from the heavens, touching the planet with that too. So I would say it's related to that. Oops, sorry. And then we have the called day of judgment. This is Revelation. This is the traditions of the Jewish people when they celebrate Rosh Hashanah. There's righteous. They're not righteous. The righteous are actually good. They don't actually have to. If someone was really righteous, they would not have to participate in Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur. They would just move right through to Yom Kippur. Jesus is the righteousness, right? Is our righteousness. He doesn't have to participate because he is the king. He's the Prince of Peace and the King of Kings. He is the fulfillment of that day. That's why Jesus has to be a part of this day. And some people put them in the beginning of the tribulation, but then Yom Kippur would not really lean itself to happening in the beginning part of the tribulation. This is a day called the coronation of the king. When you realize that is when that king is crowned on his head, meaning that he's fulfilled the prerequisites of that. One of the massive prerequisites is that the king, his father, has to abdicate a throne area. And he's going to say that you are now, and sometimes this happens because, let's say a king of England would say, now my son is going to be the king of Ireland, or the king of, this happened a lot, the king of northern France area. This would be in the 13, 1400s kind of thing, right? And so he might say, I want you to be that king down there. And so he sends you in that kind of way. But you have to be coronated, so crowned, and to be coronated, you also have to have a wife, your queen, so that you can have progeny. And those are the reasons for having that point. So you can't have a coronation just for the heck of it. If he goes, well, I don't want to get married, well, then it's like, well, then you're not really fulfilling that role. And that's why there are some interesting conversations when you look at King Henry VIII. We go to Mary, Queen of Scots, or the Bloody Mary, and then we move into Elizabeth, even though she was one of the most peaceful reigns. There might have been a possibility that the difficulty of those two people might have been part of a deviation of that issue. And don't get me wrong, King Henry VIII was a disgusting guy, but there could have been some issues that go along with that. Okay, there are 100 shofar blasts. Those are trumpet-like blasts. When you do 100, it means a completed or complete blessing. A complete blessing, when we look at how the New Testament talks about a blessing, it normally refers itself to a rapture, a harpazo kind of event, to be caught up. So it completes the rapture events. And so we talk a little bit about this. We will get into this in another series too, a little bit more. Again, you can see all that stuff in the Hope in the Last Days playlist, and you can see more about this stuff. Now, Yom Kippur is and the holiest day of the year. So this is going to be 10 days later. So you've got yourself into a place where you said, hey, man, would you please forgive me, forgive me, forgive me, forgive me. And you go to all the different people that you have potentially wronged. Once you get to this thing, you hit to the holiest day of the year, because it's also a day of prayer and fasting. We can't really pray and fast without getting yourself right. I mean, that's how it's looked at in this kind of way. Again, these are Old Testament concepts, or the Jewish concepts we're looking at. But these are fulfillments that would have to happen. For instance, there are 3 fall feasts, and the feast, the Feast of the Kingdom, in essence, is actually a millennial reign thing that would happen a little bit later, or tabernacles. And that would happen a little bit later, but the fulfillment happens in the millennial reign. These 2 guys, I believe, are hitting in this time frame of the late part of the tribulation, where the first spring to basically summer feasts happen with Jesus coming on the planet. That's his first coming. So he does some of them in the first coming, and these are second coming kind of events. They must be right with the community, and this is what we're talking about, or their crop or business is not blessed in that way. Again, it's called the Day of Atonement or purification. When we have purification, normally it burns away things. This is why the bowls of wrath are so complete. All of the seas are bloody. All of the rivers are bloody. That's another level of purification point. It's fascinating. It's purifying the planet. Even though you think, well, why would it go to blood? Because they're doing a blood atonement. When you understand that, it's a blood atonement of that. Now, this is a coming of the king. Now, a difference between coronation to coming is he's coronated or made king. When he comes, it would be like, so give you the example. Let's say we have a king in, and we'll use that same example. So we had the king in England, and he sets his son up to be the king in northern France. Let's just say, and plus there's a million different references you can look at this in some of the medieval time frames of history. Okay, and so if he abdicates a portion of this or needs to have his son to take over that, that would be the coming. So that king would come down with his queen, and he would then begin to rule in that territory. This actually is how it works, because the Father is the creator of the laws. The Father in heaven creates the laws. Well, that's actually what kings do. The Son actually executes the laws of the Father. Do you see? You have to understand your first coming before you understand your second coming. So if you don't, the Son is executing the laws. This is why Jesus came in the first coming, to accomplish the work of sin. In the second coming, he's setting up his kingdom and going, I'm taking over the planet. This is what the millennial reign is about. And this is the last day of this time frame. This is a new year initiation. And again, we talked about this one as Zechariah 14:6-8, and Habakkuk 3:11. We have another elongated day of a Joshua level elongation. But can I just tell you a real story? It's between you and me. Okay. I remember I'm probably in my first real reading of the whole scriptures. Oh man, I got to be like 19. I want to say, and this one guy who kind of annoyed me, but he was more right than I was wrong. So it was more my immaturity probably. It was like I was reading Habakkuk, and I thought he was like making it up at first, and then he starts quoting something in Habakkuk. There's some really gorgeous information in Habakkuk in different ways, but I thought he was making it up. And then as he started doing it, then I thought he was puffing his chest out, because I was like, Habakkuk, what's that? And okay, so there's some good stuff in there. This is later in the Old Testament points. Okay, so let's go through this. We had this one last time that you looked at it. We have Rosh Hashanah, the 10 days to the end of the day time frame. The first bowl, I believe, hits out here. Jeff, that would be the marked people who have sores on their body. Jeff also believes in that, but this would be the time frame of Elul. Okay, so the beginning of the time of Elul, which is tied to Rosh Hashanah. Then we have the second bowl, where all the seas turn to blood. Now, when all the seas turn to, and we mentioned this before, but when all the seas turn to blood, business shipping is done from a planet-wide point. We have the seven thunders. This is the great noise. I believe that the seven thunders shows up, and by the way, that's in Revelation 10, and John in heaven is trying to write this down. Now, remember, every time he's in heaven, he's changing his perspective upon the timing. When he's talking about things on the earth, he's talking about a linear level timing. But every time you see him sitting in front by the angel, or seeing something on the throne, that is breaking the linear time frame. And that's why Revelation 10 sits over there, versus we're also talking in Revelation 16, and yet they're on top of each other, okay? Because you're talking about heavenly issues, okay? The seven thunders would probably be talking to everyone on the planet in a different way. We talked about that last week. The third bowl is where I put, no, this is where we have some disagreement with Dr. Jeff. It's cool. The rivers are turning to blood. I put it in the early time frame, even though that's 10 days. I don't know how long people can last. Now, if you listen to Jeff and some of his gorgeous viewpoints of Matthew 24, it says if the days were not limited, all flesh would not survive. And his statement is, he flips it around. He goes, well, if you add another day to the planet, then nothing's going to be left. Revelation 9:15 says, the four angels were held back for this hour, day, month, and year. That is an exact moment in time. It cannot be changed. God cannot change this thing. You can't do anything about these time frames, no matter what you do. So what I'm talking about is a guesstimate of a time frame of this kind of thing. The rivers are going to turn to blood, which is going to give you a very short time lock of how long people can last. The second of the fourth bowl is the sun scorching the planet, which is going to need even more need for water, but also going to burn people up. When we get to this one, boy, you spend a whole chapter in this one. It's in Revelation 17. I'm not going to jump into this because this could be a whole episode. I might just do an episode some other day, but it's not going to be in this tribulation time frame, because the for Jesus and the Holy Spirit to implant this concept in John means that it's very important to him. And this kingdom of darkness is Babylon. Now, some people disagree on this one, and they want to say Babylon is New York City or Babylon is XYZ city. And I'm going, why do you want to do that? Well, America is the new Jews or whatever. And I'm going, bah humbug. That sounds Mormonism. Okay. Mormonism believed that they were the new Jews because the other Jews were corrupted. And so this is the same kind of thing that comes up of a severe deception or a level of deception. But when we take the word at its face value, we have a city that is near the Euphrates River, and I'll show you that one in a half second. That you're right near the Euphrates River. We have a Armageddon that is in the valley of Megiddo, in that the plains, around around Israel. So we're talking about in the same thing. So everything's focusing on that Middle East time frame. Because so when we have this darkness, it's a fascinating thing. I'll just tell you one little thing. The darkness happens. It shuts down every business. Now, if business was already shutting here from shipping, what will happen here, it says, now this is more of an analogy. It says that the ships, now maybe they're sitting in bloody seas, so they can't move. So that might be an analogy. It might be a real thing. But he's trying to give you an idea. And he goes, the ships, the merchants on the sea will be weeping when they see what happens to Babylon. And it's what it's trying to give you is that I'm shutting off the lights only for a level of people. See, this is going to be really set in only Babylon. So I believe that's the Iraqi kingdom of Babylon. They've been building it out for a while. Okay. So, and then it's destroyed in 1 hour. What is one thing that you can think of that can destroy a city in an hour? And which proves the Bible is true. If you want to have a proof of the Bible, here's just another proof. What could have ever happened for all of those people who say that the Bible is corrupted, that you're getting a corrupted version of it from the 1200s to the 600s to the, pick the date, when they began to corrupt it, and you're going, but the Bible keeps all of the translators of the gospel who put that translations in and put that, but forget about the translation, put the actual Greek in, said that Babylon, and they're all consistent, Babylon will be destroyed in 1 hour. It's an audacious statement to say until we have Oppenheimer, Robert Oppenheimer, who says, lo, I have become destroyers of worlds. And he's using I'm blanking it out. He's using a Hindu basically myth point. And it's an end time myth point that the Hindus believe. And he's using that kind of reference. I become a destroyer of worlds. And that's kind of what the atomic bombs. Now, there's also conversation about those first 2 atomic bombs. But when we go into the heavy nuclear age of the 1950s and the 60s, where we have these megaton kinds of things, those are absolute destructions of cities. Well, again, it can only be fulfilled in this time frame of the earth. So the Bible proved itself by keeping in this piece of information. You see how stirred up there. Now, the sixth trumpet is a real interesting one. I'm not going to do it heavy, but the sixth trumpet, I believe, is the Euphrates dries up. It says that there's a gathering of those armies. Then there are three frogs that jump out of the mouth of Satan, the mouth of the Antichrist, and the mouth of the false prophet. One of the more interesting things, when people want to talk about aliens, I would say that's a powerful statement of aliens. It is going to deceive a lot of the people. Because remember, Jesus has just shown up in the clouds to every single person, speaking with the seven thunders. Jesus speaking in the clouds. And it says in Philippians 2:11, as I'll show you later, that every knee will bow and every tongue will confess that Jesus is Lord. So now Satan needs to kind of up his game. So he's going to bring out maybe some alien demon kind of activity to show his ability to bring together all of the 10 kings, the 7 kingdoms, into the level of Armageddon or the Valley of Megiddo. So they got to cross that Euphrates River. And I kind of believe that, and Dr. Jeff has a little different viewpoint because he puts that it's going to take a little longer, but I kind of put it a little bit in the middle-ish of time frame. Again, not terribly relevant. You know, we can get all sideways on stuff, but it's not terribly relevant exact time frame of that. The point is that I believe that the 200 million that will come across for that final battle have to be activated, and I think that they're probably sitting on the Euphrates River and go, we need something. So the Euphrates dries up, it allows them to come across, and the Antichrist, false prophet with it, and Satan in there have 3 demons coming out of them. So however that works, and that stirs up the people going, you need to follow this guy. And then we have them coming to Armageddon. So that's the basic point of the sixth trumpet. At the same time frame, the 2 witnesses have existed for 1260 days. We've talked about this one. They die, and they're killed by the Antichrist. Now, here's the second woe. The first woe is the 5th trumpet of the zombie trumpet that I talked to you about. The second woe is happening in this, where the 10th of Jerusalem is destroyed by earthquake, maybe 7,000 people, it says. And this is a result of that same kind of thing. Now, it's fascinating, I didn't tell you about this one. It's fascinating that Jesus also dies in Matthew and John. It talks about that the veil is ripped from top to bottom, and at the same time, there's an earthquake. Okay, fascinating kind of stuff. And Jesus rises from the dead in 3 days. So we have another mirroring event because they will rise in 3.5 days. So guess what? Jesus does it a little faster than the 2 witnesses do. That's just a heavenly thing. They don't want them to be thought of as Christ. That's why it's probably 3.5 days. They could have said 4 days, but they came up with the term of 3.5 days. But you don't want to mirror, because they're not trying to be the Christ. They're trying to be teachers of Jesus, okay? But the consequence of killing him off is going to take out 1/10 of Jerusalem, okay? So 7,000 people die because they did it, and then they rise up and they go whoop, and they go up to heaven, okay? So we have a resurrection, and when they slide up to heaven is another picture of the rapture. Real interesting. This is one of the last, but this is the last resurrection. But one of the rapture events that we talk about in other ways happens at Rosh Hashanah. That's not the bride. That's the last groups. Okay. Again, the 7th seal in Revelation 8:1 is such a fascinating placement because we want to put it in Revelation. I mean, it's at 8:1. And then when you read 8:2 to 8:6, that's all talking about the trumpets. Well, why would you put the 7th seal on verse 1 of chapter 8? And it's like, again, remember, when they put together the chapters and verses, it wasn't perfect in the headings. And God kind of knew that. They understood that there was going to be some confusion on that kind of stuff. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with that. But it's our humanly way of being able to kind of say, this is where I am in Scripture, right? It's not just a handwriting written point. Because when John wrote it, he wrote it as just a letter. right? Or when Paul wrote his letter to the Hebrews, which is another thing, that's a letter to the Hebrews, or we wrote it to First Corinthians and Second Corinthians. Those are letter points, or in essence, pretty darn long books, right? In essence of explaining things, but we knocked them up into chapter and verses, okay? But the silence in heaven, I believe, happens here. When you have a silence that occurs, you have a pause, a heavenly pause. It's because Jesus is about to step onto the planet, and it's a huge issue. Now, the last one is the seventh bowl, the great earthquake. We will talk about that in a little bit. So I'm gonna skip right over that puppy. Then we have the great day of the wrath of the Lamb, the extended long day. So when I put that line, I should have probably put it real thick, because that day goes longer than any other day that we've ever experienced. Does it go more than 20 hours? 24, it's not 24 hours, but it's 36, 48, 72. I don't know. Okay, it could be go on for a day or two or whatever, or a little bit more. Well, it doesn't tell you how long. Don't worry about it. Okay, if it doesn't tell you, don't sit all trying to figure it all out with that. Okay. Rosh Hashanah, and I talked about this one. Rosh Hashanah is the first of the 10 days. The rapture of the bride cannot happen here in the beginning of the church, right? In the beginning of the tribulation. Rosh Hashanah must come with Yom Kippur. That's what we talked about. The 100 shofar blast is a completed blessing, means the last rapture. This is not the rapture of the bride. This is a concept called the pre-wrath rapture. This actually didn't occur because we used to have a post-trib rapture pre-2000. People believed that the rapture of the church would only happen after the tribulation, or the great day of the wrath of the Lamb, and then they backed it up to pre-wrath, which would be the seven bowls. And so some of them put it the pre-wrath position in the concept of the last couple of months, last couple of weeks, month of Elul. I mean, they'd be fine with any one of those points. But I would say why those things happen is really a concept about the who and not the whens. We get too focused on whens because God is trying to talk to you about who comes. And that comes because what happens is the seven thunders speak, but he's talking to different people and talking to different people in the way that he's talking about that. But back to the pre-wrath position, we get so concerned with a when. Again, God never tells you the whens. He didn't tell you the whens when he said that the four angels are held back for this hour, day, month, and year. He didn't tell you when. He just says it does happen. It's a set point. That means it's a set point in time, but it doesn't tell you like, oh, it's exactly at this spot. So God never tells you whens. I mean, you can kind of get an idea when you look and you piece it out with the BethlehemStar.net, but at the time frame, they weren't telling you about that. So you had to do this by looking at the who's and the whys. The New Testament and the Old Testament talks about the who and the why. Who and why. Who and why. This is a common writing statement of what you do. Now, the seven thunders will speak to all humanity. Again, they talk to what I believe are the sheep and the remnant. The remnant are the last third Jews who are alive, because Satan's trying to kill them off. This will be Revelation 12 that explains that, after, I think it's like verse 13 to 17 it is. And the millennial reign, we have to have nations outside of the Jews. So I refer to them as the sheep. And the sheep actually show up as a conversation in Mark 10:10. Mark 10:10. And it talks about, my sheep know my voice, they come into my pasture and they find rest. So we have a type. And when you realize the sheep are very similar to the remnant, which is Psalms 93, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters, and he restores my soul. Right? Those are sheep kinds of needs of the people that are in that time frame. There is also the wicked are condemned. This would be Revelation 14:15, Revelation 14:17, 18, and 19. So we have the wicked are condemned, and this is the last point to repent, but they're not going to repent. Those are the ones that happen in a different way, time frame. They are more specifically Philippians 2:11. Well, you know, uh, they see him, and they bow and say Jesus is Lord, and that's what Romans 14:11 says. And then we have, but again, we're not all the church is not saved because they have to bow to the king, but they're not doing it in salvation. Romans 10:9 and 10 kind of thing, or John 10:10, or Acts 4:12, talking about Jesus, having that salvation or getting away from sin. It doesn't say that. It just says your Lord, right? So just think about a king who comes down after his coming. This is the coming, or this would be the coronation. Now think about a coronation event, because that's what Rosh Hashanah is. So the coronation, the king, the queen's walking down the area. You know that some of those people don't believe that he really is, that they're underneath him. They probably have plans to try to take him out, but they still have to kneel to the king because of the position. That's kind of what we're talking about here. Okay. So let's move on, and I'm sorry we're going on here, but we gotta, I'm trying to work this thing through. The Yom Kippur, the great day of the wrath of the Lamb. That's why I use this kind of and it's the foci is all the way into the city, this area, this type of the people, the Armageddon kind of event with that. So there's two kind of layers out there. There's a prep point that we have to do, and we talked a little bit about this. The Babylon plague, this is a plague of darkness. It causes pains with sores. I would say to you in one way, when you read this in Revelation 17, in 16, excuse me, fifth trumpet, that'd be 16 verse 10, and that would be a mirroring of hell. Think about having a sore and darkness. Well, what is hell a little bit like? A darkness. And why would darkness create pain? Well, that would only be because there's a satanic kind of thing in there. So those people, it says, come out of you, my people. So there might be Christians around that area, or called saints, or hagios, sorry. The saints or hagios of that people, there are people there, right? So get out of there, guys. Again, no more business is done, because now the luxuries and the rich are going to die. Okay, I believe we're getting a mirror event in our time frame of when we go to the Rosha, the Nasara, the EBS kind of thing, and the killing the Cabal. This is another kind of a mirroring event. That's why it's not the event that some people will say, but it is a mirror example of this event. This will be the finality of that. Now that actually occurred a little bit in the Exodus. You see, like about 2 years ago, I kind of said what Nasara EBS kind of thing is more like Exodus, and everyone's trying to put it as the end time event. I'm going, no, it's not an end time event. This is an Exodus that we are experiencing in 2024 now. But this time frame is a finality of everything. And again, the demons live with Satan, and the people are told to come out, and the city is destroyed in 1 day, 1 hour, a nuclear level prediction. Again, the Bible just keeps proving itself true. Okay, the sixth bowl, again, we talked about this a second ago. There's a 3-part prep to this Armageddon thing. Euphrates dries up, preparing the kings of the east with her armies to come across. So again, that's Euphrates. That will be in Iran to Turkey-ish area, and goes farther than that, but basically that. Okay. The second one are 3 unclean spirits into the Antichrist, false prophet, and Satan, and that's where I talk about the aliens kind of idea. So I gave you a little prep of this one. We're just hitting it again so you can see it. And they assemble to the battle with Jesus at Armageddon. I think that they probably were coming anyway, which is why I think they're at Euphrates. So the armies are there. These 200 million men army are coming there to do a job, right? But they probably get messed up when they see Jesus in the clouds. Then Satan has to reassert his authority in here by having, demons, frogs, aliens, whatever, however you want to place that. I would love to see the alien idea and would mess with you in that way. So I think that's always possible. But again, it could just be a pure demon now. That they might skip right over the alien idea and just go straight into demons with that. Okay, the seas again are turned to blood. The fresh waters are blood. Babylon destroyed. I mean, this is just all preparation for a final finality of a battle with this too. And it's potential that we have only a few million people left on this planet, not billions, millions. Again, the planet might have, I don't know the number, 25 million, 100 million. I mean, pick your number that you feel more comfortable with that in that range. But I know that sounds like kind of crazy, but now we get into the Mad Max post-apocalyptic kind of levels. And if it goes any longer, we are all done in. Okay, so that's what it's trying to set up when we're in Revelation 17 and Revelation 16. Okay, and again, dying in Armageddon. I don't know why that didn't show up that way. Okay, let's move over to the great earthquake point. Here's what's so fascinating when you realize this, and this is one of the more powerful kinds of teachings when you put this all together. The sixth seal gives us, and I'm going to look over here on the screen here, over my other screen. The sixth seal talks about the sun is has a darkness of sackcloth. The moon is blood red. The meteors are fallen from the sky. The sky rolls up. Men hide themselves in the caves. Could be a level of dumbs. We'll talk about that one in a second. And then it also says the mountains and islands come down. The seventh trumpet talks about a great earthquake where there's hail and thunder hitting it. The seventh bowl talks about the same kind of thing, that there's a destruction, a complete destruction. These are planet-wide things. And it also actually mentions the third woe is this. This is why when you understand this, these things are happening all at the same time frame with it too, which is so weird when you realize that. So could the seventh seal happen just a little bit after the earthquake or in the middle of the earthquake? I mean, man, it's going to be happening so fast, just like when your wife or you have had that child and everything was happening so fast. And by the way, Matthew 24 says, just like as a woman who is in her pregnancy, and everything gets accelerated the deeper you go into your pregnancy, right? It's that kind of thing. So they're happening almost all at once. And that's why making a chart for this stuff is like so challenging to give you that basic idea. So again, the seventh seal happens over here. We have a 30 minutes of silence in heaven. This is verse 6 verse 6 to 2, and that means the timing. So what I meant with this is Revelation 8 verse 1, but then Revelation 8, 2, and 6 would be talking about the preparation of the trumpets. So these are separate points. These are separate points, but it also says that the seventh seal most probably is going to occur at that last little time frame. Again, the mountains and islands come down. If you separated the sixth seal and put it toward the front, you put the seventh seal toward the middle, and you put the seventh bowl at the very end, that means you got 3 separate earthquakes where mountains and islands come down. Does that make any sense to you? It doesn't hit it for me. There's thunder and lightning planet-wide because now if mountains and islands are coming down, you got, 6, 7, 8, 10,000, foot mountains, whatever, pick the number, 13,000 foot mountains, right? And they're coming down to sea level. I want to share with you, do you know that Jerusalem jumps up to about 1,500 feet above sea level? Everything else is going to be essentially at sea level. So islands, the Galapagos Islands, the Philippine Islands, might just full on disappear. Iwo Jima, smaller island, south of Japan, he would just might fully be gone. You know, I mean, just fascinating to realize. There's a thunder and lightning event that is happening around the planet. Meteors, comets are falling from the sky. Now, it also says that the sky is quaking, and you're going, okay, the planet's quaking. Why would the sky be quaking? That's when geologists get all like, I don't believe in Revelation or whatever. They don't like this. But let me just say something to you. If on the planet, the creator of the universe has his son in all of his glory coming onto the planet, wiping out numbers of people that I'll show you in a second, do you think that maybe the heavens, specifically, Andromeda, galaxy, could be quaking because the God of the universe, and it says this in Isaiah, the God of the universe holds his hand or holds all the stars. If they are potentially, 30 billion light years across, if you want to pick up a number, make up a number, you want to pick any number you want to. If they're 30 billion light years across, that's a massive number. That means God of the universe can hold the stars in his hands. It says that over and over again. So why wouldn't the God of the universe, the Father, do this? And he's quaking like this. Interesting. Hadn't thought about that, but it's just a fascinating thing. It will be so scary. It says that in Revelation 6:15 and 7-17 that the people will hide in the rocks or the caves, hoping that the rocks will fall upon them. Now we have this concept that we've all understood in this time frame of 2020 to 2025 or 2024, excuse me, and we have this concept of the dumps, deep underground military bases. So we got like these deep underground military bases, and they were created by the cabal, and I think the cabal will be wiped out. But maybe some people will actually go back into the dumps and go, man, we can't handle what's going on up there, so let's just go down here. But they're going to go, the rocks are going to, please fall on us. We can't stand the glory of the Lord that's happening. Here's another one. I mean, look, if that wasn't enough, you remember I said thunder and lightning? You got 100-pound hailstones, hailstones, beginning with, and they begin to blaspheme God. Now, I've had, plenty. I've lived in Colorado, lived in New Mexico. Well, they didn't have as much, but Colorado and Oklahoma, and they get hail more Colorado than Oklahoma. I buy a new car because my 2000 Honda Accord gets accordioned, right? So I get hit behind and that pushes me in front of someone else. So, the car's destroyed, right? So, it was a great car. This is a 2005. So it's a 5-year-old car, not even got 60,000 miles, so I'm done. So I buy a Kia Optima, right? The sucker isn't even like 300 or 400 miles, and there's a microburst. And if you know anything about Tulsa, we're microburst in mid to northern town. So it's about from like 25th and Sheridan all the way down to like 21st and Sheridan. 36th and Sheridan. So this is a very short, we're talking about a mile micro event. And it takes out every panel but one on my car. When the insurance adjusters look at it, they have they go, is this really got 200 miles or whatever the dumb number was? And they were like, no, we're replacing every panel out there. Now think about that. And that was a microburst of maybe nickel size hail that just basically almost destroys my car, right? What does 100-pound hailstones do to the planet? There isn't a building that will live. See, we already have the mountains and islands coming down, the thunder and lightning, and you got to know that happens. Meteors and comets are coming down, but now on top of that, we got hailstones. Do the hailstones come because of the meteors? And I don't know. But man, This thing's blowing apart and everything is just going to hell in a handbasket. The moon goes red. The sun goes to dark sackcloth. I mean, when everything is changing, I mean, now instead of just Babylon being in the dark, the whole planet is in the dark. I would also say, and there's a fascinating, and I don't have the reference off the top of my head, but it says the bottoms of the oceans are dry. Now, I want to have you stop for a second, go backward in time to the eastern areas south of India, south of China, and in those amazing seas in December 26th, 2004, this would be what the English call the Boxing Day after Christmas. And we have a 9.9 earthquake that happens in the ocean. It creates the biggest tsunami in at least our recorded history. Now, it could be other bigger ones, but it takes out 230,000 people around several different nations. Now, that's a tsunami. Tsunami as a concept is a modern topic. No one understood. I mean, they knew what earthquakes were because we have an earthquake at 33 AD when Jesus is upon the planet. We have recorded history of earthquakes, but they never understood something called the bottoms of the oceans would go dry. So if we have an earth-wide earthquake, you would have tsunamis of blood going about the planet, because what's in the oceans, right? Blood. So think about a tsunami 200-300 feet high coming into Hawaii, make up a name of place. It is not survivable. On top of that, those mountains around the Hawaiian Islands are just ripping down, and then we have a massive number of water. They're all gone. There's nothing left in that way. Again, the universe is shaking. The stars are shaking. I mentioned that before. This is on the same day that Armageddon is occurring. I mean, it's hard to understand what is occurring. But at the same time, we have the glorious appearing. Jesus comes back on his white horse with a name that on a rock that no one can read. We also have the same rock. I mean, we have this new name, that Jesus comes up with this instead of Scott, that when you see those cups and they say Scott means blah, 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 and like, that's a lie. Scott means a Scottish person, a Scot. You would say that about that. That's what all it means. It doesn't have any other meaning necessarily. But God's going to say, no, Scott, your name is X. I mean, whatever that he's going to come up with. And he's going to put us on that horse with that name, that new name. And he comes down with the called, chosen, and faithful. Every other conversation of the called, chosen, faithful is just the bride. No, that's three separate, or use my other way, this is sign language, three separate names. That's Kaleo, Ekletos, and Pistis. Those are like saying Larry, Curly, and Moe. Three different groups of people are coming down with him. And I talk about this more in the Hope in the Last Day series. But this just tells you like some stuff is going on. And Armageddon is completely messy. So when we kind of talk about this, I want to talk to you a little bit about Armageddon. So it's a field. I mean, it's an area with several miles across. And I don't remember, some other people have done it, but like 1,500 stadia across. So maybe, I don't know, 1,500 miles. I don't, other people have done the math, but I'm not going to worry about that. It becomes a killing field. It says that the blood will raise up to the horse's bridle. Now, if we're in that area, we might have a tsunami that comes in, but it doesn't really say that. It means that the people in that area, those soldiers of the 200 million that are showing up, and by the way, when you do the math on this, and people have done the math with the number of people, that 100, 200 million, whatever, that are in that area, it could easily accomplish this. And so they all come there, and their fight is against Jesus. So you're talking about 5 foot, 6 foot, whatever high of blood. That is a massive number of liters. I mean, that's billions of liters of blood that's floating up there. So there has to be so many millions and billions of people with, or millions of people with that. Again, tens of millions more. Could be 100 million. I don't know the number. All right. Then we have here's one of the coolest parts. We have the Antichrist, the false prophet, and Satan are picked up. Now, Mormonism believes that God the Father actually is like another one from another planet. So anyone can be God the Father to a planet. Okay, Lucifer is the brother of Jesus. And when they're in a locked battle, you see artists that will show Satan in an arm wrestle with Jesus. And I'm going, Satan isn't the opposite analogy of Jesus. That's not like good and evil going. It is totally messed up a viewpoint. Jesus doesn't even do this. This is where literature and art gets it so wrong, because they can't perceive how big Jesus is. Jesus is already on the planet. He goes, Michael, the archangel, you go do it. In essence, that's what he's going to do. So Satan, who is the biggest, baddest angel, if you read through Isaiah 14, Ezekiel 38 or 28, you read through Revelation 12. I mean, all the satanic verses, when you understand all the verses they're talking about Satan, even Genesis, right, gives information about Satan. He is way bigger than we've ever imagined, because he's taken a third of heaven with him. That's Revelation 12 and the other Old Testament verses, right? The false prophet has been massively powerful, given authority from Satan, and the Antichrist has been wiping out billions of people. But yet, one dude, one angel, the archangel, has all the capability to have all three of those boys in his maybe left hand or something, or left arm. Think about that. How much tougher than Michael the archangel is. When you read Daniel, there is an angel that is coming down to give him the message. When people don't understand that he fasts for, was it 20, 30 days, whatever it is, that blanked out the number of days. But he fasts, right? And then the angel finally breaks through and he goes, man, what took you so long? He goes, yeah, the king, or the prince of Persia, was holding me back, and I had to have Michael the archangel break through. Who's the prince of Persia? Satan. What were they holding back? End time teaching. That'll mess you up when you go to read Daniel 6, 7, 8, 9. I mean, when you understand why Daniel had to be held up for, 20 days? And why was he held up for 20 days? With another angel, a messenger angel, they don't tell you, but Michael breaks through Satan. That tells you who is the analogous dude on the other side of Satan, is Michael. And Michael's even tougher than all three of these guys put together. Again, here's what you have to understand. The Antichrist is sent alive to the lake of fire. Now, this is a new place. Hell is a place that is in the center of the planet, okay? It is a temporary holding circumstance. Now, people who are in hell at this point in time, so that would be everyone who died in the tribulation, who, took the mark, didn't believe in Jesus, right? They would be in hell. Everyone that's existed who didn't believe all from the creation all the way up through the great to the wrath of the Lamb. Those are people, those are demons and bad people. They're in hell. I mean, these are humans that are in hell. Hell doesn't go away. But we have this new concept of a lake of fire where there is burning. I mean, it says weeping and gnashing of teeth. It is so deep and difficult for that time frame. Now, that's also outer darkness. But Outer darkness isn't this place either. We can talk about that some other time. But the Antichrist is sent alive. This is one of the reasons why you have not met the Antichrist. Pause for a second. Some people will tell me Obama is the Antichrist. No. Any one of you who are awake knows that Obama's dead and he's already been, replaced with some actor guy, and he's going to die, and he will die, at the EBS kind of thing. No. Ronald Reagan was the Antichrist because his name meant, 666 numbers, right? When you put his, but and there's a billion people that kind of come into this. But guess what? The Antichrist has to be alive by the end of the tribulation. He exists, he's there, but he has to be commissioned by Jesus, given authority by Satan to do a 7-year time frame, and he has to stay alive through the Armageddon point. The valley of Megiddo, but the battle of Armageddon. The false prophet is also sent alive for eternity. That's why you don't know who he is. Now, could that guy be a bishop of a whatever, or a pastor or whatever? He's probably a character who is not talking fictional, but a real character, a real guy who gets elevated to his position from a religious situation, but he is alive up to that point in time. That's why I disagree with the concept of pope, okay? But could it be a pope? Yes, but a newer kind of pope role with that. But again, the false prophet and the Antichrist, there's, two different people. They will both be sent to the lake of fire. That's why when people say to me, well, it's the beast system or the Antichrist system, is the mark of the beast. And I'm like, no, you have to have a false prophet and you have to have an Antichrist, a one dude who has that thing. Now, Matthew 24 blanked out. So basically, Matthew 24, when we have the the discourse that he is talking at Jesus is talking to his disciples, and they're talking at the temple. And he tells you about that there are many false prophets and many antichrists. That is giving you a concept that there will be people that Satan's going to put out there as like those. Is Obama or whatever you want to pick your dude, is that like an antichrist? Absolutely. Hitler was a type of antichrist. Napoleon was a type of antichrist. Those are world leaders that people thought was. Right? I mean, they're totally types. Satan wants you to believe that. The world, the people of the world want to believe that. But Jesus, Revelation 6, verse 2, is the only one who gets to introduce them because he is worthy to open the seal. So therefore, the Antichrist doesn't show up in first in commission and then power until that time frame. And only after that does the false prophet get his commission and authority from Satan. But they have to be alive, thrown into that eternity point or that lake of fire point. Okay. And these are the only two people in lake of fire. And they're in the lake of fire for 1,000 years before everyone else joins them. Okay? So here's what I want you to understand about Satan. Satan, his end point is he's put into the abyss. Now, this is a different place than hell. So we got, we got the Antichrist in the lake of fire. We got hell going on, right? We have the abyss also happening, and we have outer darkness that you can learn in the Hope of the Last Day series. The goats are sent to outer darkness in the 45-day interim period between the tribulation and the millennial reign. So the goats actually go to a very strange place called outer darkness. This is not a good place. Christians are not there. These are bad people, okay? And they're going to outer darkness. Again, a different spot. These are only for what I would call people who are in the spirit of false prophet. There's whole reasons why I talk about that. But the abyss is this dark area that Satan's put into. Now, the abyss actually we have this abyss that comes up in Revelation 8 to 9, when we have the fourth trumpet. To the fifth trumpet, and the fifth trumpet have all those really gross creatures that sting people and they don't die. So it's closed back up with only those with only Satan in there, and the demons actually get cast in there. So maybe all the demons that are in, maybe all the demons are coming out of hell for the tribulation. Again, we don't know the exact amount, but the demons come out. They're spreading their lies and their ugliness in the tribulation. All the demons and Satan go in there. Okay? So here's the other part. Satan is then brought out, opened up. Only Satan comes out. At the end, only Satan and the spirit of Gog. So there's another demon. Don't think that's the Gog 38 and 39. This is called a spirit, okay? Because that guy's already dead. But the guy that inhabited, just like Antichrist, it's a type of Antichrist, it will die in that time frame. But that doesn't mean the spirit is dead. But the spirit of war, because this Gog guy does the war thing, and Satan come out of the abyss and stir up the nations at the very end of the 1,000 years. And they do a very quick stir. I mean, it is not even spent a lot of time on, because Jesus is actually ruling and reigning in Jerusalem. David is the governor of Israel, but he rules and reigns from the city of Jerusalem. That's his throne. Everyone will see him all the time. You could actually go visit him anytime you wanted to in that way. But this Gog and Satan will actually come up for a very short period of time, create a quick war, because that just tells you that you got some bad people. And all of those people then are sent to the lake of fire for eternity. Now, I don't get into this one, but I will tell you this one. This is in Revelation 13. And we also see this showing up in Revelation 20 and 21, where we have the white throne judgment. Now, again, I'm going to end with this one. So I'll give you a tidbit. This is actually Hope in the Last Day series. The white throne judgment happens at the very end, after the tribulation, after the millennial reign, after the stirring up of the nations at the end of the millennial reign. And the white throne judgment comes up. And so this is before the planet is ever destroyed, and there's a destruction of the planet. Now, that white throne judgment brings out all of the dead. They're reconstituted in their physical form. They stand in front of Jesus, and he says, "Your name is not written in the Lamb's book of life." He basically will say, "You're dead," in essence. Because if you're not in the Lamb's book of life, that would mean you're in the death, right? Basically, the Scott version, you're dead. And they're going to look down and go, "Yep, I'm dead." They're not going to say anything. The goats argue with Jesus. It's the only group that ever argues. But this one, the dead in hell will be transported from that point to the lake of fire. Then the whole planet is destroyed, and then we go into eternity, right? Matthew 24:35, heaven and earth will pass away, but my word will never pass away. So that would all be that ending placement. And so we finished that series, and I want to give you, and I'm going to pull this off the screen here. So let me do that. Sorry, I got to pull it off of here. I want to give you a preview of something God has been bugging me with. So I'm going to end this one point. God has been bugging me that I need to do another series, and I'm starting to work on this. It's going to take me a little time. So you're going to have to pause with me, but it will be it's what I'm initially calling the groups. We will talk about the faithful bride. We will talk about the called, chosen. We will talk about the 144,000. We're going to talk about the goats. We're going to talk about the sheep. We're going to talk about the remnant. We're going to talk even about the friends in the Gospels. Oh my gosh, when you see these different groups, these are the who's. And I think that they will be bridger points from the Tribulation series that we have here in the playlist to the Hope in the Last Day series that I've really introduced them. But I want to spend an episode on each one of those so that you understand what the New Testament is really telling you, and seeing this kind of stuff. This actually brings out so much more understanding, and it's a real powerful kind of teaching. So we'll be doing that here. We'll still do the Nastara stuff. But again, you can get all of those books at drscottyoung.com. You can come see us at Telegram, and we talk a little about some of this kind of fun stuff as well. So thank you so much for listening to the whole series. I really think you guys need to really pay attention to it, because there's a complete blessing available for you. Thanks so much.